Don't shoot us! During the Civil War 2 years ago, we saw how violent and unreliable Libya's militias really are. As likely to kill or rob their friends as their enemies. Many are jihadis. Others common criminals released from prison after Gaddafi was overthrown. How the United States came to rely on them to provide security for our State Department and CIA personnel seems truly terrible judgment. The decision to rely on militias to keep our people safe in Libya was obviously a terrible idea that gets worse. As Craig now exclusively reports, the State Department also cut back on security that was already in place. Our people. Now meet a fourth Benghazi whistleblower.
When you heard about Ambassador Stevens being killed, what were your thoughts?
My first feelings were anger. Thoughts, I was upset and angry because I felt like the adversaries we were facing got a jump on us.
55-year-old former Green Beret Lieutenant Col Andrew Wood is really the first of the Benghazi whistleblowers. As commander of site security in Libya, Colonel Wood led 16 special operators charged with providing protection for Ambassador Christopher Stevens. The team was scheduled to accompany the ambassador on a trip to Benghazi originally scheduled for June. When that trip was postponed, Colonel Wood and his team from the Utah National Guard were rotated out of Libya despite repeated requests by both the colonel and the ambassador that the team stay on because the threat level kept escalating.
You were there. Were there signs? Were there signals? Was there anything that we could have done to prevent?
I watched the British come under several attacks during the month of June. We also had threats made to us both in Tripoli and in Benghazi. In Benghazi, there was this target list that occurred, posted on Facebook, threatening to kill Americans. There was a bomb on the fence at the American Embassy. The Red Cross was attacked a number of times. Those were the warnings, and then there were a prelude toward a direct attack. The Red Cross read those signs and departed Benghazi.
When you were in Libya, were you aware of Ambassador Stevens asking for more security?
Yes, because after I made that pronouncement in June, I was able to tell him at a country team meeting that we were going to attack, and we were going to be attacked in Benghazi, as it was stated on their target list. We were the last thing remaining. It was a matter of time until they pulled it off.
Both Colonel Wood and fellow whistleblower security officer Eric Nordstrom saw the ominous signs of growing peril as the ambassador repeatedly asked for help.
We pursued those requests for security. Again, me and Eric watched those things be turned down again and again, and then they began to withdraw what they had there in Libya.
Despite the colonel's dire warnings, the security team in Libya was gutted, cut from 34 security personnel down to just 8, handling diplomatic protection for this vast and troubled country.
When Ambassador Stevens asked for more security, he was told
no. He was told normalize. We fought that battle with State Department, Maine, and D.C. They just did not see the world as the way it was, especially there in Libya.
In an email from Eric Nordstrom, the former regional security officer referred to a list of 230 security incidents in Libya that happened between June 2011 and July 2012, writing that, quote, these incidents paint a clear picture that the environment in Libya was fragile at best and could degrade quickly.
Do you know as a fact, as a former security officer in Libya, that there were Islamists, that there were terrorists, that there was Al-Qaeda operating in Libya that would possibly target America?
Absolutely. One reason I was there was to pursue those adversaries in country. I was working in counterterrorism to visualize, if you will, my counterpart working for Al-Qaeda and doing the same thing. They were out there developing Libyans to do these kind of strikes on Libyan government to destabilize them.
Why in the world then would Ambassador Rice go out there and say that this was because of some YouTube movie?
Those statements to me indicated that there was confusion, bad decisions being made at the highest levels.
In emotional testimony, Deputy Chief of Mission Gregory Hicks, the diplomat left in charge in Libya when Ambassador Stevens was killed, told the House Oversight Committee.
The YouTube video was a non-event in Libya.
Putting yourself in Hicks' shoes, what must it have been like for him to call, asking for help, begging for help, and it never comes?
Exasperating. Very exasperating. It will be, I'm sure, the most traumatic thing he'll ever go through.
People are saying there are no military assets, we couldn't respond, we wouldn't have gotten there in time anyway. What do you think?
I find it very, very, very hard to believe. There was a number of assets available, a number of things that could be done. We coached the Libyans in order to decrease and de-escalate fighting within their own border towns, Al Kufra down south, for example. Coached them to fly aircraft at a low altitude over some of the fighting to dissipate the fighting. And they did it, and it works. Why we didn't call upon them, for example, why we didn't call upon another country to fly an aircraft in there, all those things come into my mind as where were all these forces on the 11th anniversary of 9/11.
Do you blame the president? Do you blame the Secretary of State?
I don't know where the blame lies. I know there's a problem, as we've seen evidence. We don't lose ambassadors like this. It's not a normal thing to have happen. It hasn't happened in 30 years.
Like most of our friends in the military, Geraldo, Colonel Wood understands how hard it would have been to carry out a real-time rescue of our embattled personnel in Benghazi, but he wishes we had at least tried. And what he knows for sure is that if the request he and the ambassador made to keep his security detachment in country were granted, this tragedy would have had a much happier ending.
Craig, thanks. Up next,